Welcome back, everyone. This is Opinions My Own, your favorite AML podcast with me, Zila Acosta-Grimes, and my colleague, Paul Caulfield. Today, you are in for a real treat. We have Don Palmieri. He is a gems and jewelry forensic expert, appraiser, publisher, consultant. He is the president and founder of Gem Certification and Assurance Lab, Inc., or GCAL, which is the only diamond and gemstone ISO 17025 accredited forensic laboratory in the world. We talk about that in today's podcast and what that means and why that's so incredible. He's also the chairman of Gemprint Corporation. You can look him up on LinkedIn. His CV is beyond impressive, and he gives us a real insider scoop into what the jewels and gems and how they can be used for AML. It's honestly a really fascinating conversation. And he has a 50-year career to kind of walk us through. So he has all types of examples. It was a really fascinating conversation.
What was great is that it's not just AML. And we talked a little bit about some of the laws and regulations that financial services firms face, and that the diamonds and jewels industry should be facing and complying with, but also the technology. I really found the discussion on Gemprint, that the technology that they use to track and imprint within certain jewels, very, very interesting. Don's a Vietnam veteran. He does start us off in his early part of his career. It is amazing to see how he progressed, how he got to where he is now. For the general practitioner of AML, this is right down the pike for you. For the consumer of diamonds and jewels, we all are. I think you'll find this fascinating on some ideas on how we can continue to protect ourselves and buyer beware when you're in fact purchasing diamonds and jewels. And then for law enforcement, as I said before, I do hope that law enforcement and regulators do listen to this podcast. I think it's eye-opening for them. I think it's eye-opening for us. It's one of our longer forms, so we do appreciate that you continue to support us, continue to send us topics. We are on Twitter, opine_mine. We're streaming, and we are also on YouTube at Opinions My Own. So please enjoy this episode, and thank you, Ava Lichter, for your continued production assistance, and you, the listener, for your continued support. Enjoy. First off, Zila, it's great to see you. As the listeners know, you were out. You're still on maternity leave. Congratulations on your baby boy. I know you have him, right there with you. So I'm glad that
you hear little squeaking noises, know that it's all small child.
So yeah, I'm glad we've got a third host to this. But Don, very much appreciate you spending this time with us. As I look at your CV, and this is like one of those things, do you call it a resume or CV? I actually think this is a curriculum vitae, if there ever is one. When I'm in the tech space, they call really, really expert coders ninjas. I look at your CV and I don't even think of the word expert. I think of the word master gemologist, because it's just replete with experience over decades. And so for the listener and us, before we get into some cases and we talk about the anti-money laundering and your experience, give us a little bit. How'd you get here? I mean, I don't know the diamonds and jewels space well at all, but I know industry and sectors, and I see your CV and your background, and it's just staggering. And I'm so excited to get involved in the subject matter. But before we get to it, can you give us a little bit of your background and how you became so embedded and so fluent in this space?
Well, we don't have enough time to actually.
Well, we might.
Obviously, I'm old, so I've survived many decades in this industry. And it's really a matter of reinventing yourself almost every decade, especially in this business. I've done so many different things because I've done them out of curiosity, and I've done them because I have a passion for the gemstone industry. My family background, both of my parents were more on the intellectual side with master's degrees. one in social work, one in library science, English and French. And all of the children, except for one, became businessmen. And that one became a teacher, and that was my sister. So I would just have to say that very quickly, I was recruited. I didn't even know that I had any knack for design or anything like that. I took a course in high school. It was called Craft Shop for a few years. And I actually enjoyed making things, working with things, worked in wood, worked in metals. But I made a piece of jewelry because it was a requirement. And the teacher was so taken by it, he remembered it toward the end of the year when there was an industrial arts fair, and this was in Pittsburgh. And two people, myself and one other gentleman from my class, same craft shop class, who entered the jewelry piece that we made. We both won. He won first prize for execution. I won third prize for design. But one of the judges was the largest manufacturer in Pittsburgh, jewelry manufacturer. And he contacted the teacher and said, I would really like to offer these two young men an internship to come and work in the jewelry industry. Well, of course, my age being, I graduated from high school in 1965. I had two older brothers, one a year older, one 2 years older. Make long story short, they were only giving one deferment per family. And my oldest brother was in college. And so my next oldest brother and I knew we didn't have a chance. We were both going to get drafted, probably both end up in Vietnam. He was smart. He joined the Air Force and never set foot in Vietnam. I joined the Army as an MP, thinking that I would be stateside just chasing draft dodgers, which sounds now like a cowardly thing to do. But I ended up in Vietnam. So at any rate, I found out two things. One is that I did go to work for the manufacturer and I had a penchant for design. He sent me to school in New York. It was a brief school, but it was Gemological Institute of America. And they had a very intense 1-week design course. And he thought that would put some professionalism in the work that I was already doing for the company. And so that was for about 1.5 years. Then I got drafted, then I ended up as a military policeman. And then I found out I love to investigate. So long story, to really put the two together, I found out I had a passion for gems and jewelry and design and a passion for investigation. And so that's how I have to tell you that maybe that was like the nucleus for what has come since then with my seeking out education and training in both investigations. And it sounds, I mean, it came out that without any real formal training, I became an expert witness in the jewelry industry because of my, I would have to say, my family background, who, we didn't learn how to put a sharp edge on a business deals, or, it was all pretty much the golden rule, and you did things the right way and you were honest and legitimate. And so bottom line, fusing those two things together, and years and years, decades really of continuing. You can see from my CV that I've taken courses and classes on and on and on. And then I began teaching as well back in the 80s. So it's a passion. It's a love and a passion. And as you can tell, I could probably go on for 4 or 5 hours talking about my various passions, but I've really been very, very fortunate. And I've had some people who have taken an interest in me at a younger age and kind of helped propel my career. We think everyone who becomes successful in anything, no matter how good, no matter how smart you are, you always can look back at the people who made critical differences in your life, in your profession. And I mean, I could go on naming those people all the way back to my craft shop teacher in high school.
Well, I could reverse it, because you picked up the phone when I called you in 2004, when I had a diamond theft case when I first came to know you. I think there were, back then, it was a few diamonds that had been stolen. They had been at some point reshaped, and I knew nothing of another prosecutor was nice enough to introduce me to you. And that's how I came to know you. And so as I've mentioned, outside of these episodes, within the episodes, if I were to ever launder money, I wouldn't be doing it within the financial services space. I'd be walking down to 47th Street. I mean, no offense. And I think that that's one area within the diamond district, within diamonds and jewels globally. If someone wanted to, that's a much better space to do it. And that's why I kind of wanted to have you on. There's a couple things about your company, GCAL, the GEM certification and assurance lab. I get GEM, I get cert, I get lab, but you have assurance in there. And
Right.
that rings something for me because of my kind of inherent maybe bias or slant that the diamond and J business is not as regulated. And so with GCAL, why is assurance in there?
Assurance is in there because we're the only lab in the world that actually guarantees our product, our work, to the consumer. And I'll tell you very quickly, you can edit this out, but the first attorney I talked to 20 years ago when I set up the company, I told him I was going to guarantee my work. He said, I really want to advise you against that. And I said, well, I know you do, but I said, I've been in the business so long, it's the only reason why I'm opening a lab at the age of 50. You know, again, reinventing myself.
We're not editing that out, by the way, because I saw that it's the only ISO 17025 accredited lab. Is that, and I don't mean any effect, is that a legit accreditation? Why aren't more labs doing that?
Oh, it's imagine having a root canal, a colonoscopy, and endoscopy all in the same 1 hour period of time. It is, I would just have to tell you, and my son who was in here and helped set up the Zoom call, he's the ISO management representative for our company, and they put him through hell. We actually are physically audited for 2 to 3 days every year. And I should add, and I didn't send it to you, but we're the only ISO accredited 17025 accredited forensic lab. And so there's 2 certifications we have through ISO, and it's actually through ANAB, which is ANSI, National Accreditation Bureau. Very legitimate. And there's only 4 labs in the world that have that, 4 gem and jewelry labs that have it. But every crime lab has to be ISO accredited for forensics. Pharmaceutical labs. I think there was a law that was passed, federal law that was passed within the last maybe 5 years or so, that said all crime labs. And there's a very strict process you go through to become a forensic lab. And that means it's not one person at the top making the final calls on the most critical issues. And that's been one of the, I'm sure it's one of the problems with a lot of convictions that that have been overturned lately. And it all goes back to the crime lab, and the director of the crime lab was trying to do a favor for somebody, or they thought they had a solid case just by turning the dial one more notch. It was everything they needed to convict the person. I'm not talking like I understand the law, but just in general. So for us, the fact that we go through this every year, we have to pay people money to come in and look at absolutely everything. They have complete control or complete access to everything, including our finances in our computer system. They can pick any employee or as many employees as they want at random and interview them. And the interview questions are not a walk in the park. Yeah. I mean, they really try to drill down and make sure that everything is according to the process and procedures that are laid out and that we claim that we do.
Your area what you do with GCal, and we'll talk about GemPrint, and law enforcement. Obviously, I have a high degree in confidence in what they're doing. I don't have a very high degree of confidence in what the retailers or the wholesalers are doing. And just to give you some comparison, every year, if you're a community bank, you're examined. I mean, examined. It sounds like it's the proctology, the I forget what else you said, but it was, I don't want to do it. I think I
A
purposely
root canal,
forgot it.
endoscopy.
So the banks every year go through it. If you're community, it's ongoing. If you're larger than 10 billion, I don't see that happening to the retailers and the wholesalers and the I say D&J because it's a sector within banks. That's what we refer to. I don't know if it's what you guys hear, but in the diamond and jewel sector, I don't think on 47th Street, those that are required, if you're a wholesaler in diamonds, jewels, and gemstones above, I forget what it is, maybe $50,000 on an annual basis, selling or purchasing, you're required to have an AML program.
Yes.
In my heart of hearts, I really don't think that they have programs that stand up to the rigor of knowing one's customer. And so I've got great comfort in what you're doing. I've got good comfort maybe what the law enforcement doing. What's going on within the wholesale and the retail business? Because I Googled consent order and diamonds, consent order and jewels. I found nothing. And you can do that for banks and forget it. Your pages would go on forever.
Right. Well, first of all, this is it's still, in a sense, the Wild West of commerce. I mean, to get right to the heart of the matter, laundering money using gems, especially more so than jewelry, probably the easiest thing in the world. Diamonds defy any kind of detection that a human would go through for checks, security checks through airports, through any kind of checks. I mean, literally, you can easily swallow $1 million diamond or multi-million-dollar diamond, and it can pass through your digestive system without any problem later on. And you can go through a complete strip search. I mean, cavity search, everything. And short of putting you in a cell with a small basin or a can to relieve yourself, and leave you there for days and allow you an early out if you drink this, I guess it would be like castor oil or some kind of oil that goes through you quickly. And that's what some of the countries in Africa have done. Some of the mining companies, when they suspect someone of swallowing a rough diamond that they're digging, it's the bosses are not a mile underground digging through those caverns, those pits. These are workers, and for someone for a 10-carat piece of rough to fall into somebody's hand through one of those pits, and for them to swallow it quickly. So if they're suspected of that, that would be their form of vetting them before they release them. And I don't know how it is now, but 20, 30 years ago, if you worked in a diamond mine, you were fenced in. You could not leave. You signed a contract for 6 months, and you would stay within this fenced in area, and you would eat and sleep and do everything within this area next to the mine. You would not go home. You would not visit people. You would not have visitors, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there was some kind of really draconian kind of vetting before you could leave there to make sure that you didn't have any diamonds. So just knowing, and I've probably belabored the point about how concealment is very simple. I could go through cases.
Let me ask you a broader question. I do have a couple cases, and I know you were intimately involved in them. Is the marketplace getting better? Has it stayed the same? Are there initiatives that are going on Your company, Gemprint's been around since 1976. I haven't explained it. Zila and I haven't explained it in the preview. Are we getting better? That you're calling it the Wild West is kind of wild unto itself, because in other episodes we're referring to cryptocurrency, and Chairman Gensler said it on Capitol Hill earlier this year, called cryptocurrency the Wild West. And
Yes.
I'm stunned that I'm hearing it from you, being, decades involved. Are you seeing it get better? Are there possibilities, solutions out there to make this better?
Look, there are lots of programs. There's the Kimberley Process Certificate Scheme. And that was developed it was founded in 2000, mostly by American diamond dealers. And then it grew. And it was really as a result of the horrendous war that went on in both Liberia and mainly Sierra Leone, because Sierra Leone has and still has a wealth of diamonds in the earth. So it's still a very viable mining country. Liberia was more gold than it was diamonds, but there were a considerable amount of diamonds. They were just smaller. Anyway, I guess the bottom line to that is that the Kimberley Process Scheme started where every country that was a diamond producing country had to set up a government controlled registration system, and you would get a Kimberley certificate for a parcel of rough. Now, what they did was they said you could just put this parcel of rough all together and weigh it. And so that was the first big hole that I saw in the Kimberley Process Scheme, because you didn't know if you had 2 diamonds in that parcel that weighed 326 carats, or whether it was 300 diamonds that weighed that. So, and they still haven't altered that. So I see that as a way for people to still dodge taxes. Every country who produces the Kimberley certificate is also supposed to have a valuer, an independent valuer, to put a legitimate value so that taxes are paid to that country, sort of a beneficiation gate, if you will. Still very, very easy to get diamonds out of those diamond producing countries. And the other problem is government corruption. Now, Africa, the continent of Africa, is still and has for 100 years been the leading producing continent of rough diamonds and the most valuable diamonds in the world. Right now, Russia, Botswana are probably the 2 largest countries. But Botswana is a small country inside the continent of Africa and just north of South Africa.
Do I have it right? And I read quite a bit to prepare for this. Did you appraise an 1,100 carat rough diamond in Botswana?
The crowning jewel of my career.
There we go.
Is that I was hired by Sotheby's, who was going to auction that diamond. This is the second largest rough diamond of gem quality ever unearthed in the world. Ever.
This is audio and video on YouTube. Those who are listening just audio on iTunes or Spotify or elsewhere. How big is 1,100? And then I'll describe.
It's only.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
It's about that big.
An apple?
Oh, bigger than an apple.
Okay.
Maybe an apple and a half.
Okay. Well, that
depends on the apple. A Macintosh.
All right. Well, that's big. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Okay. So what year would you do that? And what were the controls? I mean, if you're ever going to have controls in place to make sure that this is appraised, correctly and handled correctly, what year did you appraise this?
In 2016. It was discovered in 2015. Now, where it was discovered is the most important thing. It was Botswana. Now, back when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, when she wrote up volumes of information about various African countries, she said that was probably the best democracy and the best run country in the entire continent of Africa. She said it was just, and everything that they do. I mean, they have a very, very legitimate government, very legitimate democracy, voting system. Their education is second to none in the continent of Africa. Their hospitalization, again, second to none in the continent of Africa. Everything they do, plus college, free. If you can qualify, I can't remember what they call their secondary school, maybe secondary, but their high school. But if you qualify, you get to go to university free of charge, paid for by the government. This is all funded by diamonds. So Botswana is the second leading country in the world with diamond reserves of gem quality. Russia is the first at this moment.
I
don't know, did I answer the question or did I go?
You did.
You asked me what year.
What
It was
did it?
2016. It was the most famous. There was the most famous diamond that had been unearthed because the company who did it, Lucara, had just set up, they had just invented these new machines. Usually when the diamonds come out, they have to crush the ore. Well, when you crush the ore, you're crushing diamonds too. But they had set something up where instead of crushing the ore and the pebbles down to a certain size, they crushed it to a larger size. And even at that, a piece of that diamond broke off. It was recovered next to it, but it broke off. So it was actually a 1,500 carat gem quality rough. Make a long story short, that diamond is in New York now being cut. I'm not sure it's being cut and polished in New York, but I know that the beginnings of it we said that in our report that the largest, highest quality diamond that could come out of that piece of rough was 300 carats. And then there would be lots of 20 and 30 and 40 carat diamonds coming out of there. That diamond was the most beautiful. The rough, I mean, we could actually see through it. And that is a near impossibility with most diamonds that are most rough diamonds. Most of them have a skin or a frosting or different texture to the surface where it's almost have to polish to be able to see in. But because a smaller 300 carat piece broke off, it cleaved. It's just like the grain of wood, like the cleavage in wood or the grain in wood. Diamond has an invisible cleavage and it can cleave just the same way. If you strike it hard, it'll just shear in half. So we had a very, very shiny window that we could see in.
I'm going to ask one question.
Don't get me started.
Well, no, I'm going to ask one question that's going to move us towards the marketplace, and then I'm going to bring up the KS trade versus IGI diamonds. If in an instance like this, we have a 1,500 carat, that's 1,100 carat, and then they're going to break it off. Does this go into the marketplace for retail and wholesale? Is this used in does it go and sit in a museum? Or does it go into the marketplace, or what then happens here?
That's a great question, because in my report, my recommendation was that they try to contact all the major museums in the world. That diamond belonged in a museum. You know, the largest diamond was a 3,000 carat unearthed in 1909 or 1905. And that was broken up and it's in the Crown Jewels in London.
So is that what they asked you for? Because you said you were coming into appraise, so do you get to recommend what they end up doing with the diamond? That's part of your report?
Yes. So essentially, you have to understand, there were the owners of the mine. There was the government, Botswana, that by rights owned a piece of whatever comes out of this in terms of money. And then there was Sotheby's. And so Sotheby's was hired by Lucara to do the marketing of this particular diamond. And an auction of this magnitude had never occurred before to the public. There are many, many auctions to the trade. And so anyway, yes, they asked me many, many things. They actually asked me after the report was done. It was a 40, 50 page report that, and two of my colleagues here came with me. So Sotheby's funded our trip over there, paid us for our work, but it was for three of us, my lab director and my senior research director. And they just did a phenomenal job. And so the three of us, there were three sets of eyes on this because we didn't know what we were walking into exactly. All we knew that this was, and it was shrouded in secrecy. When we were hired, we had to sign our life away in terms of confidentiality. So not only could we not talk about it then, and we've been released from that since, just so you know, but not only could we not talk about it, we couldn't ask any questions in the industry about it from people who may have known, because they didn't want anyone to know that we were going there to do this work on behalf of the auction, and then essentially on the behalf of the company Lucara.
How did you get hired? Was there a bidding process? Is this like, there are 4 or 5 gem experts and you all bid, or did they just approach you?
No.
It's shrouded in secrecy and silence.
No, it's the actual work that I've done. I was actually involved in a case as an expert witness where Sotheby's was on the other side, a piece that had been lost, not their fault. They had sent it to a lab and the lab lost a very, very important part of that. So all the people at Sotheby's knew me for years. Plus, I've done tremendous research at the auctions going all the way back to 1978. But in my publication, I've been listing those results since 1982. So they knew me, and they knew me well. They'd seen my reports, and they thought, and my reports are very concentrated on photomicrographs and images, so that we don't just write the story, we show the story. And that's what makes our reports, I think, very helpful in court, because we make it so, and I always think in terms of, I'm talking to members of a jury. When I'm writing a report, I always write it as if I'm going to have to defend it in court. And I've done that enough so I know what a slaughterhouse that can be at sometimes. And but I also write it so that the least interested person on the jury will find some interest or find something in my report or my demonstrative that they can actually get excited about. Including to the point where sometimes when I'm testifying, I have to loudly clear my throat into the microphone because jurors fall asleep. And I would probably be one of them if I had to listen to some of the stuff that goes on in some of these court cases. But anyway, that's
so let me give you a specific.
That's who I'm talking to.
Let me give you the specific case of KS Trade versus IGI. And I read about it, and, for the listener, those who have, engagement rings, I think that this rings very, very true for me and close to home, where it was the overgrading of the diamond, where I think prior to, getting married, I do my 2 months of savings, as it, used to be, many years ago. Now it's a heck of a lot more. And you think that you're buying a 1 carat, you think that you're buying a 2. And in this instance, and I'm reading public information, IGI was accused of overgrading, and that, yes. And if it happens once, and having been a criminal prosecutor, if it happens once, it's not just a one-off. And so how pervasive, I actually think it's probably incredibly pervasive of what's going on right now with the overgrading.
Yes, it's still going on. And keep in mind, when I opened a lab, I didn't open a lab at the age of 50 to compete with the behemoths of GIA and IGI and some of the other labs that were already in existence. What I was trying to do, and I wasn't trying to replace them, what I was trying to do is shame them into taking responsibility for their work. Because look, it's just like, and this is something easy for your listeners to understand. When we had the financial collapse in 2008 and 2009, what was the root cause? The root cause was inflated valuations on subprime mortgages. That was the root. I mean, that was like that was the rumblings. That was the earthquake that just destroyed the global economy for a period of time. And I may be embellishing that a little bit, but that's how I saw it. And it's the same thing. It's, if you make my products look better, I will give you more work. So it doesn't even have to be bribery. It doesn't even have to be a cash bribe, although there have been. And if you really dug deep, you could find that two of the major labs, global labs in the world, have both been had scandals because of bribery, because important people in those labs in a high position were actually bribed individually with cash to inflate grades on very important diamonds.
You and I didn't talk about this at all. The movie that everyone watched was The Big Short, where they were able to very, very articulately show through the movie how these subprime mortgages worked. And I think they showed a game of Jenga where you've got a few well-graded mortgages versus sitting on top of very poorly graded mortgages. You see a direct analogy there?
I do. I mean, look, let's face it, S&P, who's bigger than S&P? The other, Fitch, and there was another one who's Moody's, yes. And I mean, these are the names that just roll off the tongues of just about everybody. You don't have to be in the financial world to understand that these are the rating agencies. So I think all rating agencies, I mean, based on my personal decades-long experience in my industry, this is, we're not selling something where lives depend on it. We're selling beauty, we're selling emotion, we're selling something that nobody needs, but fortunately for us, everybody wants, or almost everybody wants. So there's no excuse for us. I don't know that there's any excuse for anybody being dishonest, but I think all rating agencies have this moral hazard of, I really want that account. I know what I have to do to get that account. Am I willing to do it? Can I convince my top echelon to fudge, to elevate these grades here or there? And so this is why I started my lab with a guarantee, a consumer guarantee. So I'm not going to argue with the guys on 47th Street. I don't guarantee my grades to them. I guarantee it to not even to their customers who are the retail jewelers, but to the retail jewelers customer who I will never meet unless our lab has made a mistake and we've overgraded a diamond. So we have quite a reputation on the street and in the industry, is that nobody really wants to use us unless they have to, unless a retailer says, I want you to use them. And fortunately, there are enough that do.
This is firsthand knowledge, having been on 47th Street and having prosecuted that case many years ago. One of the guys I was able to interview opened up his overcoat, and inside he had a piece of tissue, and in the tissue were diamonds. And I mean diamonds. And this wasn't the only piece of tissue that he had on him, and certainly wasn't the only set of diamonds that he had on him either. And he wasn't the only person I saw who operated in this way. And so this is one reason why I have the founded belief that at least parts of the industry do not have the books and records that they're supposed to have. And it's not even close to comparison to what the financial services industry is expected to have.
Excuse me, they do. Sometimes they have 2 or 3 sets of books.
Do you think that the grading companies would let a lab grown diamond go through?
We just found one
Tell me.
last week. Well, we found one that came to my attention. That was a very, very significant one. And it had a GIA laser inscription on the girdle. Now you're familiar I guess for your audience, you can actually, using a laser, you can laser a number onto the girdle of a diamond. So it's one way of tracing a diamond, but they just go in about 5 microns deep. And a human hair, the width of a human hair is average about 50 microns. To give you an idea, it doesn't go very deep into the girdle. And
is the girdle what would sit within the setting?
Yes, this is what the prongs go over.
Okay.
The prongs cup the girdle. So the girdle is the widest edge, and everything below the girdle is called the pavilion, and everything above the girdle is called the crown.
Got it.
And then the very top, the largest facet, is called the table of the diamond. But the girdle is that edge that goes around, and that's where the prongs cup the underneath and the top, and keeps that diamond secure, or any gemstone secure in a mounting.
So a GIA certified diamond comes to you, you look at it, and you find out that it's not even a diamond. It's a diamond, a true diamond, but it was lab grown.
Okay, so I have to correct you there. And this is Federal Trade Commission definition. A lab grown diamond is a real diamond. It's a real diamond. It's not a mine diamond. It's not what would be called a natural diamond. It is a lab grown. So it's grown above earth in similar conditions that carbon is grown beneath the earth's surface. And that's called a mined or a natural diamond. So both are equivalent in every way, except one grew over billions of years in the center of the earth and came up near the surface through volcanic eruptions. And the other was grown maybe in 3 or 4 weeks in a reactor in a laboratory, in a very pristine, very clean laboratory above ground.
Would a 2 carat lab grown and a 2 carat natural be the same price? Same cut, same 4 Cs?
Absolutely. Same 4 Cs, but absolutely not the same price.
Yes.
And
okay.
So the diamond was, and it happened to be a 2 carat diamond. It was lab grown. And we don't know, we don't believe that it was a GIA mistake. We believe that someone put that GIA inscription on the girdle of the diamond and somehow filtered it into a greater parcel of diamonds, and it was purchased by a very well-known and a very prestigious company overseas, and sold a couple of times here in New York before it was then mounted and came through our laboratory to go to a significant retailer.
And so it was being marketed as a natural diamond.
Oh, absolutely. And it was priced as a natural diamond.
Okay.
So we're talking mid 5 figures for this diamond. It was very high quality. And as a lab grown, it was a very high quality too, but would have sold for maybe 25% of the price of the natural.
How pervasive do you think that is?
I hope not very, but I fear we're not the only lab that has found these stones with what we consider to be fraudulent inscriptions. But if you read the number, which we did, we read the number, we looked it up on the GIA report search and or report check, and it gave us the entire information. This diamond was actually cut very, very, very closely to what was described on the GIA report.
Let's turn to gem print. And you told me about this near 18 years ago. You founded it in 1976. I love the name of the podcast is Anti-Money Laundering Technology and the Law. And here this is identification technology for gems. And as I understand it, you're able to shoot light into the center and there's a refraction. And then from the refraction, you are able to create a constellation that you're then able to take a snapshot of.
That's better than I think I probably could
Well,
have described it if you had given me the question.
I
like that.
want to get to the question because I remember the way you said it. Because if in my case they were shaping the diamond to change the shape, but you were like, it doesn't matter because I can see from the inside out. Why, as I understood it then, and in the preview I asked you then, gem print right now is not universally accepted and used.
No.
And
Well,
why not?
It's not universally used. It is universally understood and accepted as positive identification of a diamond. Well, let me just explain. We didn't found the company. We bought the company in 2011, but I've been a user of gem print technology since 1978. So it was founded in the Weizmann Institute in Israel. It was sold to an American company, diamond company, and they produced it, and they had gem print machines all over the world. And their problem was it was the way they were trying to monetize it by charging a per click, and then people learned how to dodge that. You know, in this industry, there's as much mental energy into figuring out angles as opposed to answers. And unfortunately is an indictment on my own industry, but I think it's pretty true. The thing with gem print is that our industry, most of the industry, and they could have easily adopted this, and it could have been a piece of equipment in every retail store. Banks should have adopted it. I mean, banks bemoan the fact that, you know, they get ripped off all the time, and that when their auditors go in, they don't know if they're looking at a parcel of cubic zirconia or if they're really looking at a parcel of diamonds. And cubic zirconia are worth nothing. I mean, they're worth pennies. And so the best way to track polished and finished diamonds has always been gem print. As a matter of fact, Clarence Kelly, who was the first FBI director after Hoover, when he resigned in 1976, I think Hoover died in 72. Clarence Kelly took over, and he resigned from the FBI in 76. He actually joined the board of gem print. And his statement was that it is less likely that two diamonds would have the same gem print as two humans having the same fingerprint. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And they've used gem print for decades in the FBI crime lab in West Virginia.
Why aren't
we recently have had conversation.
Why is this not being forced to track and embed and trace all diamonds from unearthing or harvesting? I'm not sure what you call doing it with lab grown, but why aren't these printed right then and there before they even get 5 steps away from the miner or from the lab?
Well, the next thing that happens after that is government control, and this industry will fight government control to its last dying breath. It would rather go out of existence than have government controls, which of course is unfortunate. It's not a patriotic thing. It's not it's simply a greed thing. They don't want anybody else knowing their business. And if they want to cook the books, they don't want some IRS agent being able to come in and say, oh, but this one, didn't actually go here because we went and had it gem printed. So, look, on a much, much bigger scale, when we were part of Collectors Universe and we were married with the gem print, we talked to banks. We talked to many, many banks who were having problems with their customers who were, they were saying that they had millions and millions of dollars worth of inventory. They were showing the bank people parcels and parcels of diamonds or cubic zirconia, but they had accountants that would say, yeah, okay, yeah, that's what we have. But when they would end up going bankrupt, where they might have had $4 or $5 million on their books in inventory, They ended up with 40, you know, 30, 40, $50,000. So they don't want it. The industry doesn't want it. And the industry, and I have to say, the other part of the fault is, at least since we've owned it, is production problems of, because we want a level of perfection in the equipment. The equipment was not easy to use, but it wasn't overly expensive. It was just that you had to be skilled to use it. And most people in our industry don't want to hire any skilled people beyond internet. And even that, this industry was so slow to adopt the internet and web services and all the other things. We're like in the dark ages. I mean, we're coming out.
And that's where I kind of want to stop with the final question is, there's one of three courses. Number one, a Big Short type event happens where consumers are affected worldwide. I hope not a 9/11 type event where the Klieg lights are turned on to the diamond and jewel industry and change happens, or there is change from within. And I see, you know, what you're doing with GemPrint, with GCal, change from within, or it just stays the same. As you look at the next, you know, 5-10 years and what's happening with technology, what's happening with ESG and awareness, are you favorable on the direction that the industry is going? What would your prediction be?
Well, I think that we have lots of agencies, some 100 years old, Jewelers Vigilance Committee, and we have the World Diamond Council, and we have manufacturers organizations, and we have a lot, and we have the Responsible Jewelry Council, which is as much greenwash as anything. We're certified members of it. I mean, you're almost forced to join, and that's another root canal that we get. We just had a physical, a day and a half physical exam by the RJC. But there are members who are transgressors. I mean, I don't see anything worse than cheating the ultimate consumer with inflated grades. I see that as more damaging to the public than money laundering, which is damaging. And I don't in any way say that it's not, or that it should be okay. But money laundering doesn't really hurt the entire public as much as it hurts a segment of the public. As it relates, I think, to our industry. I could be wrong on that, but that's just my take. But anything that goes against the integrity of our product with the consumer, I think that's the time bomb. I think that's the time bomb of this industry. And although we've had, we had an EGL scandal a few years ago.
What's EGL? Just for the
that was European Gemological Laboratory, and they were grossly inflating grades, color and clarity. GIA had a scandal in 2005, HRD in 2010. HRD is Hogerod, and they were a government-controlled laboratory in Belgium, and they actually sent their graders to jail who were involved. Nothing like that happened. And then now the KS Trade versus IGI. Who knows where that's going to go? But what I've been reading, and I don't have a legal eye when I'm reading what I get on the internet, I have no other involvement in that case. They did already admit to money laundering, $7 or $8 million. I guess they paid a fine, but nobody went to jail. And now is the other issue of the inflated grading.
How could the consumer protect him, herself then?
I think really is just demand that that when they buy a diamond, that they make the jeweler, even though there are laws that help, like express warranty in a lot of states, UCC laws that protect the consumer, that actually force the seller of a product to be responsible if they sell something where they've represented it, even unknowingly, as something that it's not. But a lawsuit over a diamond engagement ring, you're not going to see many of those. What you do is when people find out they've been screwed, you don't hear about it because they just say, "Oh, okay, the jewelry industry, they're all crooks," and they don't do anything more in jewelry than they absolutely have to, or they go to costume jewelry for self-adornment if that's what they want to do. But I just look, I've been at it all my career. And frankly, I feel like a voice in the wilderness sometimes about this inflated grading, but we've had court case after court case. We've had scandal after scandal, and oh, well, that doesn't happen anymore. It's kind of like conflict diamonds. You know, the industry will tell you there's only about 1% leakage in the KP system. But I'm sure that there's much more than that. It's the easiest thing in the world to do.
I'd want to make sure if and when, and maybe the next time I buy a diamond that you're involved before I put money down. Certainly.
We'll give you good advice.
Well, I appreciate it. I do hope that the industry benefits from more oversight, because I do think that there are some things slipping by that I hope aren't just, I don't want the consumer to get hurt, but I certainly don't want people to be physically harmed by what's going on. And sadly, I think it is happening. So, Don, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I'd just like to say there's a lot of good. We're talking about the bad. There's a lot of good and a lot of good people in the diamond and jewelry business. And I would say the majority are good and honest dealers and retailers. And by no means would I discourage people from buying and enjoying diamonds and jewelry.